Hi, everybody. I don't know if you can hear me, but it's
Otherwise, for you, sir.
Sir, we can hear you.
You connect. Yeah. You can use the cordless also, and that also is disconnected. Disconnected. Yeah. Oh, audio mic also disconnected. Okay.
I'm really sorry, but it's coming out rather garbled, and I'm not being able to make you out. Could you say that again?
Hello, hello, hello.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
This work will do. No? Hello.
Hi there. I'm here.
He's not audible.
Hi there. Can you hear me now? Please let me know if you can hear me.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Brilliant.
Restart. I don't know. I will stay late. I will start. Welcome.
Yeah, sir. We'll take a minute to just set right the problem here.
Yep, no problem. I have till 10:30 my time, 11:30 Paris time, and 3 o'clock your time, I think. So we have 25 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Um, Here we have Professor Mitra with us, and he'll be speaking on conflict journalism. And later on, we are having the Q&A session.
Yeah, so how's everybody doing? Should I begin? I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused. Are we starting or are we waiting for something?
Yes. Yeah.
Are we starting?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Lovely to be here and thanks for the invitation. I'm looking forward to hearing more from you than to talk about myself because I'm boring and you're exciting. Um, my research previously has been on conflict visuals and conflict photojournalism, especially the people who are photographers in conflict affected contexts. My previous research has been in Afghanistan, as well as my most recent project was on female photojournalists in various parts outside the West who often work in social or overt conflict affected contexts. Um, I'm probably going to start a research project looking back at Afghan photojournalism, given the recent events there in the autumn of this year. Other than that, there's not much else to share at the moment. I'm at ICA, which this event is a part of. I'm the vice chair of the Visual Communication Division. So I'm happy to speak about that as well, if that's of interest to the people here. And I've also attended a few ICAs over the years. So if that is something that is of interest, I'm happy to speak to that as well. So yeah, fire away. Let's not let's utilize the time we have the best we can. And if there is anything that is I can have a chat with you about, please fire away.
Hi, I'm Manjushri. Sorry. Hi, I'm Manjushri. I would like to know because your recent paper on female photographers. I would like to know about the methodology you had followed while working on that.
It was based on ethnographic interviews, which were conducted on Zoom. We invited female identifying photographers from two different organizations, agencies, and sort of what should I call them? They are civil society organizations which work to empower female identifying photographers around the world. So we went to their database and sent invitations to their membership, inviting them to take part in ethnographic interviews with myself and my research assistants. And we asked them a number of questions regarding their practice and the obstacles they face in becoming successful, not only within the country they work in, as well as the regional context, but outside the regional context that are in a global sphere. How do they see their success as professionals happening? What do they take to be the sort of benchmarks that they have to achieve? The interviews proved very fruitful, and one of the most fruitful areas, the ways we asked the participants to give us data was to ask them what questions we should be asking. I thought that was a research innovation in the field of ethnographic interviews, which also proved fruitful for what the responses we got and the areas that we hadn't planned to explore was actually helped by the participants themselves for us to understand that this is another area that we should be looking at. So methodologically speaking, that's what we did.
I have a similar study where I worked on women journalists. Did your respondents come out with whatever the questions you had asked, and did they answer it openly, or had they any problem to answer your questions?
You're talking about a researcher subject rapport in the case of an ethnographic interview, if I'm not mistaken, Manjushri. Am I correct? Have I understood your question? The rapport is a hard, difficult area to establish, especially because our research was conducted on Zoom. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, any plans we had on actually traveling to locations to conduct interviews was kiboshed. So the way we approached this was to make very clear our intentions and our neutrality as researchers. In the plain language statement and in the way we went about recruiting the people we spoke to, we made it abundantly clear that we are not affiliated to any of the professional organizations that they would be aspiring to become members of or are members of or draw benefits from, that we stand apart, that we are university researchers with absolutely no vested interests. I think this really helped, and we also verbally reinforced what we had said in writing, the fact that we stand apart and we are only interested in their views. So having that approach, a very honest, transparent, and also a very strict approach to being absolutely the third party to the research topic, I think really helped, and it did help open up the respondents to being very incisive. That's the word I would use: incisive, insightful, and honest in their responses, and they did not hold back in the criticisms that they thought were fair to make, but they were also fair in the sense of being able to see where they themselves might be open to criticism as well. So it was a very rewarding experience, and I did not have to give a very short answer to your very short question. No, it was not a problem at all. We had very good responses and very rich data to work with as a result of the interview process going rather well.
Hello, sir. I'm Nitisha, one of the research scholars at Manipal Institute of Communication. So my question is related to your work only, but also in a broader perspective. During your research work or during the investigation, did you find that the female photojournalist or photojournalists identifying themselves as females, they were not being sent to a particular assignment because they might not do justice, or just because they are females they would not be assigned that assignment or given soft assignments? In India, during the Ukraine crisis, a lot of male journalists were sent there. Female journalists were sent just on the Ukraine-Poland border. So, there's something that I can see in India as being practiced. Females being given softer beats or soft coverages. So during your research, did you come across any such thing that photojournalists identifying themselves as female being assigned only a certain kind of assignments?
Absolutely, yes, Matisha. There, there was there was a a dual-edged nature to the embodied female experience as a photojournalist working in various conflict-affected contexts, the people we spoke to. One was that you would be seen as less threatening of a presence, but at the same time, you would be seen as being threatened or easily threatened by the dangers that be in a photographic assignment. There was also a sort of gender stereotyping in the sense, and this is not just from the South Asian context, this is across the Middle East and North Africa that we found the same thing, as well as in sub-Saharan Africa. We were told the same issue existed, that there would be a sort of segregation of the female photographers, female identifying photographers, towards what were seen as topics or issues that affected the female gender. So if there was a story, one of the examples that I can remember from the interview says, if there is a story on female genital mutilation, then it is the female photojournalist who would be preferred, because it is seen, and perhaps with reason, that that person would have more access to the topic. But at the same time, that came at the expense of being seen as only fit, as you said, Mitisha, for certain types of assignments. Didn't need to be necessarily soft assignments or assignments that shied away from the more deeper topics, but they just happen to be different sometimes in the experiences of the people we spoke to. And we also heard from the respondents that they wish to push back against this sort of gender related assigning of work, and that they wanted to break free of those gender barriers. But they were also very aware of the advantages, very slim ones, may I say, that this female embodied experience provided them, in the sense of there can be, better access in certain cases. And this is known. The research project I finished focused on contexts outside the Western context, but there have been previous research conducted on female photojournalists working from the Western context in non-Western context, who have said the same thing, that it's a negotiation between being threatened because of the female embodied experience, that the female embodiment of their presence on the field, and also the privileged access that sometimes it can provide. Sorry, I don't know if I answered your question, but it is really a rather nuanced picture where there is no direct yes, no answer, because it can be contextual.
Hello, sir. This is Shri Raj. I'm a faculty here at MIC Manipal. Yeah, my question is related to the entire idea of conflict reporting. If you take academic discussion of the conflict, the idea of conflict, it doesn't restrict itself to only the war or violence. It covers the larger aspects of a culture, gender, race, and migration, and other issues as well, political, social, economical things. But why still you think, both in the sides of both the Western as well as the Eastern side, the journalism itself restricts when it comes to the conflict reporting only to the war and violences?
Well, it's the age-old question, and I think it's best understood as the lizard brain theory, where we are exercised as the human animal by the most overt threats that are posed to us, the ones we don't see, the ones that are structural threats that do not affect us immediately, we tend to put on the back burner. So of course, there comes, and this is actually Professor Sayes Harmelink wrote a particular treatise, shall I say, in 2015 of the relationship between media and war or conflict. And he mentioned how, because of the episodic nature of media coverage, press coverage, news coverage, it just cannot work with the cycles of conflict as understood at the structural level or the cultural level. It just cannot, because there is no immediate threat that can be reported on. And resolution of conflicts happens not as an event, but as a process. And media, by its very nature, news media, I should clarify, news media by its very nature is event-oriented and episodic. And so if conflict resolution, or if you want to call it peace, if peace is not an event, then of course, the focus of press coverage is going to be on the episodic nature of conflict, where you can report day by day, blow by blow, of the war that might happen in Kashmir or in Kharkiv. Because it is possible to do so, and it's possible to generate audience interest. Whereas, if we were going to talk about the various processes that are happening in, let's say, Kashmir, or the negotiations that are happening behind closed doors to resolve, if possible, if at all possible, the conflict in Ukraine, it is not possible to report in the same manner, because it is not overt, it's not spectacular in nature. The conflict resolution processes are not spectacular. And as somebody once pointed out, in the context of the Northern Ireland conflict, the Troubles as they're known, that you don't want the peace negotiations or conflict resolution mechanisms to be reported on extensively, because it can also fuel conflict. You want the negotiations to be closed door, because negotiations often come with compromise, and compromises leave nobody happy. And if they're reported on very transparently, which you and I would agree, all of us here would agree, is what it should happen. But there is that other point of view, which would say, oh, no, we don't want the negotiations to happen in public, because that can actually fuel more agonism, more conflict among the various points of view that might exist in a population.
Before you open the discussion to the forum, that again the members present here, just I would like to pose another question, that this is regarding the Western influence in conflict reporting. If you take from Iraq to Afghanistan to Ukraine, largely the propaganda line looks like like whatever is a Western or US based style, or US propagated line. They have not tried to report on side of what Russia says or Russian interests are, that in the area that wherein it want to capture and get it back into the region. Or maybe we have not tried to question about why the NATO is trying to expand is a the Atlantic region too. So on all these matters, so why you think that like Western interests are largely dominated in conflict reporting?
Well, there's a simple answer to that. Well, first of all, it's about place, and it's about power, and it's about money, right? So place, in the sense of what was true in 1978, when the One World, Many Voices report by McBride was commissioned by the UNESCO, about where the geographical emplacements of the media organizations that sort of control the flow of information. Where they were, they still are there. And any sort of effort to redistribute that sort of communicative power has come to naught, especially after the great liberalization of market and in the expansion of market economies around the world. So that's place. And so the entrenched power, communicative power, as Des Friedman called it, the power to power over something as well as power to do something are both qualities of media related power Dr. Friedman would have us think about. The power over being the means of communication, to take a Marxist point of view. The power over the means of communication through which news and information might flow to us. And of course, the power to, through that control of the means of communication, the power to shape the narrative. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that we have to take a non-aligned point of view to every conflict, because I don't believe sometimes in some conflicts, non-alignment or journalism of complete impartiality and neutrality can itself be a partial and not very neutral stance, because by standing aside, we can also let harm proceed. But at the same time, the entrenched privileges of power, money, and place through which our communication flows happen, continue to happen, and will happen in the foreseeable future is, of course, the reason why the narratives, whether they be visual, textual, political, social, or cultural even, about conflicts tend to happen with what you could call a Western point of view.
Coming back to your research area, I would like to ask you one more question, because your study focuses mainly on global South, female photographers in global South. So I would like to know, how is the situation of female photographers in the kind of Western world or developed countries?
Well, in our interviews, as it happens, we did conduct interviews with some female identifying photographers who were based in the global North. And they were the first ones to point out that even if within their own settings and locales and professional contexts, they do feel invisible, and this is also backed up by research conducted in the US among female photographers, that there's the unwritten rules of photography, professional photography, which following Pierre Bourdieu's idea of how a particular professional field works, you might call the doxa, the unwritten, unspoken assumptions that govern a particular profession. It is well known that those doxic outlines of the profession of photography, whether that be in the global North or whether they're in the global South, whether they're in the East or the West, tend to be masculine. There is an almost innate relationship between the act of photography, the sort of invasiveness that comes with this visual prosthesis that you must project into somebody's life to record it. There is a sort of masculine nature to that practice, and that has translated in the 150 years of the history of the practice of photography into it being identified, even though it's never been only a male prerogative as a profession. It is translated into being understood as a very masculine profession, where one must discover new lands and uncover new things exactly in a parallel to the colonial geography that we may know about, the way the world was shaped and understood was an understanding that these benighted lands must be uncovered and discovered. And the same idea has been transferred onto this tool, this camera, this practice of photography, where it must serve as a masculine tool to uncover and discover the lands that might be exotic or unknown. So of course there is that common experience of female identifying photojournalists in the global south and the global north. But beyond that, there is, as I pointed out earlier, the notion of the place and the geographical, what I would call geocultural power dynamics that comes with where you are, where your access to the hubs, the nodes of photographic production, the industry around the world, the Parises of the world, the New Yorks of the world, the Londons, is much more limited if you're not in the same place. And as a result, you then, as a female identifying photojournalist, not only do you have to breach the barrier placed in front of you by the masculine doxa, you must then also transcend the boundary placed upon you by the north-south axis that the media, global media, does still have entrenched within it. So Manjushri, if I may, we are actually past the scheduled time and I do have another thing to get to. So if we could keep this rather brief, I would be really...
Just one question.
One or two is fine. I'm just not
sure.
Too many. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Professor Sanjay here. Are you able to hear me, sir?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. In your paper, you methodologically you talk about the social and the cultural capital. Now, the paper also argues that the residual might seems to rest with the global north. I mean, in terms of the argument. Now, my question is, as a category, then the socio-cultural and other forms of capital can never be negotiated in the economic might in the field of journalism. Can I take it as a strong message and articulation that comes from your paper? Related question is the local and foreign. Does the foreign impact and influence what kind of agenda the local should send in terms of consumption in the rest of the world? Thank you very much.
The economic imbalances we know very well between various parts of the world. We live in an unequal world where economic resources are definitely not distributed, to put it mildly, equally between the various parts of the world. And what I wanted to highlight that has not always been pointed out in research on journalism or photojournalism in the global south are the imbalances regarding social capital and cultural capital. And this is borrowing from Bourdieusian understanding of how a professional field works, where you not only need economic capital to succeed, or your way, your avenue to succeeding economically speaking, financially speaking, is through accruing social capital, the people you know, as commonly we would say, it matters who you know rather than what you know. But also at the same time, cultural capital in the sense of what you know. And there are consecrating agents which certify what we know. So even though you can't see because I'm using a virtual background, there is my PhD certificate hanging behind me. Or if you go to a doctor's, they would have their medical certificates hanging in their chambers, in their offices. The idea being that we need our knowledges to be given imprimatur certification by consecrating agents. And what I wanted to point out in this particular research is that these imprimaturs in the plural tend to come from consecrating agents situated in the global north. So the universities and the professional organizations and the world-spanning photo agencies are the ones that award, if I may use the word, prestige upon you as a photojournalist or a photographic professional. These particular consecrating agencies and people don't tend to be present outside the Western context. And this is because of the entrenchment of privilege that we spoke about before, the media power concentrated in particular parts of the world. So as a result, your success economically depends also culturally, your ability to transcend, to build the kind of social and cultural capitals in other parts of the world. And your second question, the local foreign agenda, of course, it's who pays the bills at the end, who gets to call the agenda. But I have to say that we did in our research, and that's not the article I had sent via email, but it's a different book chapter that was published earlier, where we found there was active resistance by the photographers we spoke to reshape the agenda, the news agenda, the visual agenda about their people, about the people they identified with and the place that they identified with. There was a pushback. And the most extreme form of pushback was refusal to take on assignments that they believed would visually stereotype their country or their community. To stop in its tracks the reification of visual narratives that they felt were unfair.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Mitra, for your wonderful time and also sharing your views on various issues. Thank you for that.
No problem at all, Manjushri, my pleasure. Mitisha, Sriraj, and I'm sorry, sir, I didn't catch your name at the very end.
Yeah, no, Sanjay, Professor Sanjay here.
Professor Sanjay. Thank you very much for being here and for your questions, and all the other attendees who I didn't get a chance to speak to. I hope to see you in ICA or any other conferences at some point very soon.
Yeah.
My email is with Dr. Rani, and if you would like to get in touch, please feel free to do so. I would love to hear from you. I have to sign off now, but yeah, sorry, please.
And I'll communicate with you on the specifics of some of aspects of your paper. I'll do that later. I'll send you a mail. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Shall I speak? Okay. Yeah. Okay. For today's events, we are ending with this session. The evening session that is scheduled at 9:30 in the night mostly will be a YouTube event. In that case, we shall share the link with you. From tomorrow, we'll be starting at 11:30 a.m. in the morning. The sessions will go on up to 3:30 in the evening, followed by a break. And at night, 8:30, we'll be back again with Manipal Regional Hub, our first panel session. Thank you. At 2 p.m. tomorrow, 2:30 p.m. tomorrow, we'll be having an interaction section with Sonia Livingston. It will be ending by 3:30. A few researchers from here will be interacting with Sonia Livingston on the topic of digital media. We really hope all of you can join in with us.